Welcome to Rich Conversations. This is another one of our weekly guided reflection sessions where we're going to take about 40 to 50 minutes out of our day to simply just ask simple questions that are meant to get us to think more intentionally about our own lives and the moves we want to make moving forward. Just taking a little bit of time for ourselves, which is a healthy thing to do. And we're going to start this week the way we do every week, and that's 5 minutes of breathing. This will recenter ourselves so that when we're answering these questions, we can be focused and relaxed. And all we're going to do is just breathe in and breathe out. Don't overthink it. Like we do everything. And we want to be sitting straight up. And just breathe in and breathe out. All right. 5 minutes of breathing. Way to go. Now, open up to a notebook, piece of paper, or, if you want to type, that's fine too. Or if you're just thinking about it, that's great as well. Whatever works for us. Whatever works. And primarily, we want to focus on effectiveness. So let's start this session with the question we always lead off with, and that's, what are we grateful for? So many things to be grateful for, right? So pick one thing, go a little deeper on it, or pick a few things that come to mind. What are we grateful for? This next question take some time and write what we would want to hear from someone. What do we wish to hear? Write it. We know what we want to hear. And oftentimes we wait for others to say that thing, and it never happens, right? Think about what you want to hear and write it down. And you could explore this exercise more and write, use an entire exercise for it. But for this, let's just simply write to ourselves what we want to hear. We know kind of what we want. We know how we want to be loved. We know the words we're dying for someone to tell us. Let's just tell it to ourselves. Let's just write it. And how does that make us feel? How can something as simple and as small as this affect the rest of our day and our mood the rest of the day? It's like we're waiting our entire lives for these words and people to acknowledge it, but let's take a shortcut. Let's just write it and tell it to ourselves. acknowledge your talents and your gifts and the value you bring to so many lives. Something came up recently. What were we talking about? Funerals and death, and it's very rare that someone gets to hear all the nice things about them before they die. It's after they die that everybody shares how they impacted them and how they've moved them in ways that have changed their lives, right? Well, let's take a minute and just kind of take a branch off of that tree, and what do we want to hear? We're so in our heads so much, And when we're in our heads, we're not here in the world, and we can't see what's happening. And when we can't see what's happening, we can't react in a natural or kind of positive direction moving forward. We're kind of stuck where we are in our heads. Yeah, what do we want to hear? This is just you. Be honest. Just do it. Just write it. Yeah. Doing what we do is kind of thankless. Everybody is out here doing their thing. And it often goes unappreciated. So it's interesting being a human being, right? It's not easy. It's not easy if you have lots of resources or no resources. It's just the human thing. We're in this human body and all these different thoughts and emotions and feelings come up. What we want to do is be able to be aware enough to understand the emotions we are experiencing at a time so we can better kind of maneuver, rather than we're not aware and we have these emotions, we have these feelings, and then we're just reacting kind of blindly the way a mammal would. Instinctually, the goal is to have kind of a higher level operating system so that when we are going about our day and living, we can put thought into our actions, right? And then we can see things that are happening and react through the processor of that. Let's kind of piggyback off of that last question, and let's write one thing. What's one thing we're great at? Let's start there. Maybe we think we're great at many things. Maybe we don't think we're great at anything. But what is one thing that we're great at? I heard someone say recently, like, figure out the one or two things we're great at, and then everything else be okay with being good enough. Being great at one or two things, and everything else just accepting being good enough. I don't know. It's one perspective. Let's even take this further. What's something we can do that no one else can do? Something we can do that no one else can do. Now we're starting to steer in the direction of purpose. What's our purpose on this planet for the duration of our life? That's some heavy stuff, you know? I was on the combine yesterday. It's harvest season here in the Midwest and on the farm. I've been harvesting, I planted a garden this summer, and I've been harvesting throughout. And it's been fun to have. I've eaten vegetables every day for the last 2 months that I grew in my garden. That's pretty cool. But now it's harvest season, and I was on the combine harvesting soybeans. And so when I'm out in the open field, I'm thinking of different things in life, and it can get to these bigger questions, you know, purpose and what are we great at, what all these big things, like who are the people we love being around most, you know? This next question, oftentimes we think of or in society we hear the phrase self-love a lot. And it can be challenging to kind of get there, especially in like our like Western culture. I feel like there's so much pressure put on us, or maybe not even put on us, but we put on ourselves. And when we hear the phrase self-love, it can often, when we're going from a place of all this pressure, it can be hard to find that love. So let's take a different approach with it and start with friendship. In dating, you first start off just getting to know the person, being friends. Would I be friends with this person? And then it goes to love, right? there are certain gears that you're shifting in until you go to the top one, which is love. So let's think of it this way. As a friend to ourselves, what would we say? As a friend to ourselves, what would we say in accordance to what's going on in our life? What are we going through right now, and what would a friend say about it? How would a friend respond? How can we be more friendly to ourselves? Instead of thinking it, how can we be more loving to ourselves? And, we conjure up images of, I don't know, candlelit bubble baths, or a day at the spa, or relaxing watching a movie, but like friendship. What would a friend respond to our thoughts at the current moment, issues we're having, experiences? Being more friendly to ourselves. This may be a difficult question depending on where you're at in life, but who are a few friends that you want to remain close with for a long period of time, long term? What friendships do you want to invest your time and your energy and emotions in? Who are those friendships with? It's a pattern I kind of noticed getting older is people tend to carve out slots for a small handful of people. You can only, life is limited, time's limited, your physical location is limited. And so we oftentimes don't go out just meeting new friends all the time. And there's a lot of joy that comes in with the development of different relationships. And that can often be more interesting than just meeting new people all the time. It's like developing those relationships over a period of time and, you know, the changes that go with it. But if you are intentional with it, what friendships, what people do we always want to feel connected with, you know? It's always good to meet new people, though, at the same time. I feel like these are a little heavier questions today. Let's see where our mind goes with this next one. If we accepted patience in our life, if we accepted that not everything has to happen in the next 6 months, in the next year, 2 years, 5 years, if we accepted patience in life, what is our guess of what would happen and how we would feel? Let's take a moment with that. What things would vanish? What things are on our mind or weigh on our chest that would kind of melt away with understanding that patience is part of life? Perhaps life is not so much of this race that we have to be so narrow and focused on and on this path. And if we're not hitting these checkpoints or these times, then we're in trouble and concerned. What would our life look like if we were relaxed? And I don't mean this as like lying on a beach in a tropical weather. I mean, when we go about our everyday life and we approached it with a calmness, a steadiness, a lightness, what would change? Yeah, what things would change? Here's a good question. What things did we think before that we no longer think now? What things did we think before that we no longer think now? You can kind of get yourself into a labyrinth with this one. What am I thinking now that I won't think in the future? I've been reading a lot of like spiritual books this year, and I just changed it up, shifted gears a little bit. This last book I'm reading is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas by Hunter S. Thompson, and I've had a number of friends tell me about this book. I just never got into kind of the concept or the plot, really. Very degenerate. But there's a pattern in like who recommends it to me, and I see patterns based on the characteristics and interests, and very similar to music. Books have a way of describing people. You can better understand an individual by the books they read, very similar to knowing an individual based on the music they listen to. I feel like books and music have this very similar kind of connection with ourselves. Yeah, so going from these like very peaceful, very spiritual books to this Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is quite the difference, I must say. So let's think about a pattern we've been in, and what would be a stark contrast to that? What would be the like complete opposite of it? You know, whether it is what we're reading, whether it is what music we're listening to, whether it is the activities we're doing. Maybe we're playing video games all the time. Well, maybe now we go outside and we study the different types of trees that are around. I don't know. Maybe it's the opposite of that. Maybe we're always writing and reading. And you know what? Why don't you go play some video games? You know, maybe we're really into these like high art kind of movies and films. Well, what if we just watch something not at all like that? And vice versa. And see if anything changes within us, if anything is kind of provoked. Kind of like sifting for gold. You know, so you have these rocks, the dirt, and this is like the 1840s, say. And we're in a Colorado landscape by a stream, and we just have these like filter things. I know we're shaking it. And hopefully it exposes the gold, right? The dirt falls through, filters through, and we're left with something, right? Something. It's kind of like that with this approach. We've been doing something and we kind of get in a groove, but what if we do the opposite of that? And then we filter it. Okay, then what is that something that we can take away, right? Because if we keep doing this, it doesn't mean it's right or wrong, but we're not exposing ourselves to potential possibilities, right? So what is something completely opposite of what you're consuming, what you're doing? How can you do that? Identify the next steps. it's hard to learn something new or gain new information if we're not exposing ourselves to things that would be new to us, right? And it doesn't mean you have to become an expert in this or dedicate a whole lot of time to it. It's just like exposure in a way. And if we think about politics too, right? If we're just consuming content that's only reaffirming our political views, we're not going to learn anything new. We're not going to be able to solve problems because we lack other possibilities of and angles of looking at things. Yeah. All right. Last question. Because I have to go to the fields. Hop on the combine again. What are we energized for in the next week? In the next week, what are we energized for? I love this question. I think it's good to have something that we're looking forward to that will elevate our homeostasis, you know? If we're kind of just like flat, our baseline as a human, not as a human, but like us personally, right? What is going to elevate that baseline, you know? And when we think about it ahead of time, it can provide a little bit of that boost, right? Think of planning for a trip. You know, you're going to go somewhere fun, you're looking forward to it. The anticipation is almost as much fun as the actual experience, right? So I think it's always kind of good to be thinking about that. Like, what's ahead that I'm energized for? That's going to elevate my experiences, my feelings. That's my alarm to go out in the field. Almost made it. But yeah, this was a little heavier of a session, I would say, than we normally do, but these are great questions, and I think they're important to ask and important to think about. And just keep on keeping on, right? We can be a little bit kinder to ourselves. We can be more friendly to ourselves. We don't have to love ourselves completely right away, right? But let's take steps to just be a little bit more friendly to ourselves and be more patient in life and not allow things to have so much weight on our minds and our chests, and just approach life a little bit lighter, you know? Thank you for being here. This has been another weekly guided reflection session. We'll see you next week. Thanks for taking the time. Inspire the future.